The guard stopped beneath the recessed light panel and keyed his wrist unit awake. The corridor was designed to feel neutral, neither warm nor cold, neither bright nor dim, but at this hour it leaned toward sterility. The air carried the faint smell of polish and old stone. No footsteps echoed behind him. The west wing was supposed to be quiet until dawn. He angled his body so the nursery door remained in his peripheral vision and brought up the access log. The interface responded with a soft vibration rather than a sound, a courtesy setting reserved for residential wings. He scrolled slowly, deliberately, letting the timestamps align in his mind. Seal confirmation 0214. Officer ID matched the night supervisor. No subsequent access recorded. No override. No mechanical fault. He looked back at the door. It was not wide open, just enough to break the line of the frame. The gap was small, deliberate. Whoever had left it that way knew how much could be noticed without triggering alerts. The guard did not touch it. He noted the angle, the shadow it cast on the floor, the way the light from inside failed to spill outward as it should have. He checked the corridor camera next. Live feed showed what he already knew: empty hall, stable signal, no interruptions. He rewound the last 15 minutes. Nothing passed through the frame. No staff carts, no custodial movement. The system was clean, too clean. The sound came again, not loud enough to register on sensors, not sharp enough to be a cry, just breath, uneven, breaking its rhythm. The guard felt his shoulders tighten, a physical response he corrected immediately. He steadied his breathing to match the pace drilled into him during night rotations. Observation before action, verification before escalation. He opened the written register housed in the wall panel opposite the nursery. Paper was still used in residential zones as redundancy, a concession to tradition and legal caution. The book lay flat, its spine weighted. He flipped to the current page. The supervisor's handwriting was neat, almost decorative. Nursery secured, child asleep, initials, time, ink still slightly raised. The guard compared it with the digital record. They matched precisely, too precisely. Human entries rarely did. He scanned the margins for annotations. None. No deviation marks. No secondary signatures. The protocol required 2 checks for any movement involving the air. Both were present. Both pointed to normalcy. Behind him, the corridor remained silent. Ahead, the door remained wrong. He activated his private channel and requested confirmation from central monitoring. Their reply came after a pause that was fractionally longer than standard latency. All systems normal, the voice said, professional, unconcerned. The guard asked for manual verification of the West Wing access points. Another pause. Confirmed, no anomalies. He acknowledged and closed the channel. The responses had been correct in content, but the timing stayed with him. He returned his attention to the door. The sound had softened, but had not stopped. He crouched slightly, lowering his head to align with the gap. The light inside was dimmed to sleep settings, amber-toned. He could see part of the rug. A small object lay near the threshold, half in shadow. It did not belong in a secured room. The guard straightened. He recorded the observation verbally into his unit, keeping his voice level. Object present, unidentified, door unsealed, audible distress. He did not assign cause. He did not speculate. Protocol required him to wait for authorization to proceed further. He waited.
The sound inside shifted again, closer now, as if something had moved toward the door.
The guard waited 3 more seconds. It was not a long time, but it was enough for the sound to change shape. What had been breath became a low, broken noise, the kind produced when restraint met exhaustion. He did not move closer. He did not reach for the handle. He adjusted his stance so his shadow would not fall across the gap. His wrist unit pulsed once, an incoming message from the duty adjutant. Text only. Hold position. Supervisor en route. No estimated arrival time. No instruction beyond delay. The guard acknowledged receipt without comment. He noted the phrasing. Hold position assumed the situation was stable. It also assumed that stability was preferable to certainty. He shifted his weight and examined the door frame. The seal strip had been disengaged cleanly, not torn or forced. That required either proper clearance or an override code. Both were logged. Both traced back to the same authority already recorded. There was no mechanical explanation left to test. The object near the threshold resolved itself as his eyes adjusted. A small wooden horse, its paint worn smooth along the neck where fingers would naturally rest. It had been part of the nursery inventory for years, catalogued and photographed during every quarterly inspection. It was not meant to leave the inner play area. Its presence here meant the child had crossed the room alone. Another sound, sharper this time. The guard raised his hand slightly, palm outward, a reflexive calming gesture he did not consciously register. The noise faltered, then resumed, thinner. He did not speak. Voices carried in stone corridors, even whispered ones. He reopened the access log and pulled the raw metadata, something usually reserved for audit review. The timestamps aligned to the second. Too exact. The system had been written to accept minor drift. Someone had corrected it. That realization did not produce anger or alarm. It produced clarity. This was not neglect. It was control. The guard keyed his channel again, this time to the supervisor listed on the register. The call rang once before being redirected. No explanation. He terminated the attempt and documented it. Failed contact. Time noted. Footsteps echoed faintly from the far end of the corridor, measured, unhurried. The supervisor would arrive composed, with authority intact and explanations prepared. The guard understood the sequence that would follow: review, reassurance, quiet correction. The incident would be absorbed and flattened until it fit the record. Inside the nursery, the sound rose again, closer to the door now. The guard took one step forward, not to the handle, to the toy. He nudged it back across the threshold with the edge of his boot, returning it to the room without opening the door further. The noise paused, as if registering the movement. A small hand appeared briefly in the gap, then withdrew. That was enough. He activated his unit's internal recorder and switched it to continuous capture. He stated his name, post, time, and location. He described the discrepancy, the audible distress, the presence of the child at the threshold. He stated that authorization had been requested and delayed. His voice did not change. The footsteps were closer now. The guard placed himself squarely in front of the door, blocking the view from down the corridor. He did not touch the handle yet. He placed his hand on the seal mechanism instead, feeling the cool metal under his fingers. Protocol allowed forced entry only under immediate threat. The definition of immediate was intentionally narrow. The sound from inside broke into a short, breathless cry. The guard disengaged the seal. The guard remained still, positioned half a step back from the nursery door. The corridor lighting was dimmed to night protocol, a soft amber that flattened depth and edges. It was warmer here than in the outer hallways, temperature regulated for infant comfort. That, too, was noted. Warm air carried sound differently. He did not touch the handle. Instead, he shifted his weight slightly, angling his head so his right ear aligned with the narrow opening between door and frame. The gap was no wider than a finger, enough for air, enough for sound. The noise came again, not loud, not sharp, a drawn-in breath, uneven, followed by a pause that lasted longer for sleep, then a release, air forced out through tightened muscles. The pattern repeated, irregularly. It lacked the rhythm of dreaming distress. There was no babble, no half-formed words, no wandering vocalization. This was controlled in the way children are controlled when they are trying not to be heard. The guard checked his comm unit at his collar, but did not activate it. Premature reporting triggered response chains that could not be reversed. Once logged, the situation would be managed by distance and procedure. Inside the room, something shifted, fabric against fabric, a small movement, cautious, then silence again, deeper this time. The absence of sound pressed harder than the noise had. The guard stepped closer, close enough now that the door filled his field of view. The wood was pale oak, unmarked, fitted with a soft close hinge designed to prevent accidental noise. The latch showed no damage. Whoever had opened it had done so properly. He lowered himself slightly, bringing his eye level closer to the gap. Light spilled through from inside, steady and low. Night lamp intensity, standard setting. He did not look in. The guard activated his internal recorder. The soft vibration confirmed it was live. His next actions would be logged, whether he spoke or not. Inside the room, the breathing resumed, faster now, accompanied by a faint sound that could have been fabric tightening or fingers pressing into cloth. The guard's hand moved toward the door handle, stopping just short of contact. He paused there, suspended between procedure and proximity, as the sound behind the wood sharpened into something that no longer fit any approved category
The guard
of
did
normal.
not open the door. Instead, he straightened and took a measured step back, restoring the distance that protocol preferred. His hand dropped to his side. The recorder continued to run. He adjusted his stance so the corridor camera would have an unobstructed view of him and the door together. That alignment mattered. Context mattered. He activated his comm unit. West Wing internal, nursery corridor. I'm registering an irregular sound pattern from within the heirs' room. Door logged sealed, currently ajar. There was a pause on the line. Not silence. He could hear breathing on the other end, but a delay long enough to register as deliberate. Define irregular, the watch commander replied. The voice was controlled, neutral, no alarm embedded in it. Distress indicators inconsistent with sleep disturbance, the guard said. He kept his tone even. Duration exceeds standard threshold, requesting camera access verification. Another pause, shorter this time. The nursery feed is live. No alerts flagged. Child is under assigned care. The phrasing was precise. The guard noted it. Under assigned care. Not alone. Not unattended. Copy, he replied, requesting confirmation of personnel present. A faint shift of sound came from the room. Something struck wood lightly from the inside. No impact, just contact. The guard did not move, but his focus narrowed. The noise was close to the door now. Stand by,
the commander said. The guard waited. He kept his gaze level, eyes fixed on the grain of the wood where a darker knot formed an oval near the center. His breathing slowed deliberately. He counted again, not seconds this time, but sounds. Inside, the breathing fractured. A short intake, a sharp stop, then a sound that did not belong to crying, a suppressed vocalization, cut short before it could form. The comm unit clicked. Caretaker Lysa Moran is logged inside. Senior household authority. No irregularities reported. The name meant something. The guard did not react outwardly. Moran's clearance superseded most internal checks. Her presence explained the sealed log discrepancy. It also complicated everything that followed. "Understood," said the guard, requesting welfare confirmation. There was movement on the line now. Papers, perhaps, or someone shifting position. "That's not necessary," the commander replied. "Caretaker has discretion during night routines. Child acclimation protocols can involve—" The sound from inside interrupted him. A sudden sharp inhale. This time it was not restrained. It scraped against the quiet of the corridor like torn fabric. The guard raised his hand slightly, a reflex checked halfway. He forced it down. "Sir," he said, not raising his voice, "that sound is acute distress." Silence answered him, longer than before. The corridor seemed to narrow, the warm air pressing against his skin beneath the uniform. Sweat gathered at the base of his neck, unnoticed until now. "Do not breach," the commander said finally. The words were calm, firm. "I am escalating internally. Maintain position." The guard acknowledged the order. He did not disengage the recorder. Inside the room, footsteps approached the door, soft, deliberate. They stopped just on the other side. The breathing shifted again, closer now, uneven and fast. The child was near the door, too near. A second set of movements followed, adult, heavier, controlled. Fabric brushed fabric. A whispered sound followed, too low to form words, but sharp enough to carry intent. The guard felt the weight of the door in front of him, solid and thin at the same time. Oak and policy, procedure and consequence. He stepped forward once more, close enough that the handle was within reach. His reflection wavered faintly in the polished brass. Behind the wood, something small struck the door again, this time not by accident. The guard placed his hand on the handle and held it there, waiting for the command that might not come.
The guard did not move from his position outside the nursery door. He adjusted his stance slightly, redistributing weight to ease the pressure building in his lower back. The corridor lights maintained their steady glow, neither dimmed nor alert bright. The palace climate system hummed faintly through the vents, calibrated for sleeping quarters. Everything in the environment insisted on normalcy. He activated the internal comm without turning his head. "Control, this is West Corridor, Post 7, he said quietly. "I have an access irregularity and possible welfare concern, requesting supervisory guidance." There was a pause longer than the system's usual response time. The channel remained open, carrying only static and the faint echo of other distant transmissions. The guard kept his eyes on the door. The sound behind it had subsided to shallow, uneven breathing, the kind that followed crying rather than sleep. "Post 7, clarify nature of concern," Control replied. The voice was neutral, practiced, no urgency, no alarm. "Nursery door logged sealed at 22:10, currently unsealed. Audible distress consistent with a juvenile occupant. No alert triggered," the guard said. He kept his phrasing precise. This was not the moment for interpretation. Another pause, longer this time. "Stand by," Control said. The word settled heavily. The guard knew what it meant. Not denial, not approval, suspension.
time placed deliberately between observation and action. He remained still. Protocol required it. Escalation beyond this point would require explicit authorization or immediate threat confirmation. He watched the thin line of light at the base of the door. It flickered once, as if something inside had shifted. The comm clicked again. "Post 7, have you visually confirmed the occupant?" Control asked. "Negative. Door remains closed." "Any indication of forced entry?" "Negative. Hinge wear is recent but not conclusive." Another silence followed. Somewhere deeper in the palace, a door closed softly. Footsteps passed at the far intersection, unhurried, belonging to night staff. No one approached his position. "Post 7, this area falls under household oversight after 2200, Control said at last. "We are notifying duty steward." The guard's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. Household oversight meant civilian authority. It meant delay wrapped in courtesy. It meant someone whose priority was continuity, not confrontation. "Understood," he said. Minutes passed. He counted them without looking at the clock. The sound behind the door returned, faint but unmistakable. A small intake of breath, then a suppressed whimper, quickly stifled. The guard felt his hand flex inside his glove. The comm activated again, this time on a secondary channel. "Post 7, duty steward advises no intervention at this time," Control relayed. "Nursery staff conducted checks earlier. Child is under authorized supervision." The guard did not respond immediately. He reviewed the statement internally, testing it against what he could hear, what he could see, what the logs showed. Authorized supervision did not explain the unsealed door. It did not explain the absence of a live camera feed from the interior monitor, which should have auto-displayed by now. "With respect," he said carefully, "request confirmation of interior camera status." A brief sharp click preceded the reply. "Camera feed is temporarily offline for maintenance." The guard looked at the ceiling corner where the camera lens sat, dark and inert. Maintenance windows were scheduled, logged, not silent. "Request timestamp on maintenance authorization." The channel went quiet. When Control spoke again, the voice was slightly altered, not tense, but constrained. "Stand by, Post 7. The guard remained where he was. The air in the corridor felt cooler now, or perhaps he was simply more aware of it. Behind the door, the breathing hitched again, followed by a sound softer than a cry, but heavier than silence. He reached for the override key at his belt, stopping just short of disengaging the clasp. The override key felt heavier than its mass suggested. The guard let his hand fall away from it, returning to a neutral posture. He had not been told no. He had been told to wait. That distinction mattered to people who never stood outside locked doors. The comm channel remained open without sound. He knew Control could see his status marker, a steady green indicating compliance. He also knew the system logged every second he stayed idle. That record could be read either as discipline or hesitation, depending on who reviewed it later. Footsteps approached from the eastern junction, measured and deliberate. The guard straightened, eyes forward. A figure emerged from the shadowed corridor, the duty steward. Civilian uniform, dark wool jacket, palace crest stitched small and unobtrusive at the collar. No visible security clearance badge, only an access pin clipped to the lapel. "Evening," the steward said softly, as if volume itself might disrupt the wing. "I'm told there's a concern." "Yes, sir," the guard replied. He did not move aside. Nursery door unsealed against log. Audible distress from inside. Interior camera offline without scheduled maintenance record. The steward glanced at the door, then at the guard. His expression was composed, almost tired. "The child has difficulty settling," he said. "Night supervision has discretion." "Supervision requires visibility," the guard said, "and sealed access." The steward's mouth tightened slightly. He stepped closer to the door, but did not touch it. For a moment they both listened. The sound inside was minimal now, a faint rustle, then stillness. "You're trained to respond to threats. This is not that." "I'm trained to respond to risk," the guard answered. His voice remained even, "including welfare risk." The steward exhaled through his nose, a controlled release. "If we escalate every irregular sound, we undermine the household's authority," he said. "The family expects stability." The guard held his gaze. "The family expects protection." The steward looked away first. He adjusted his cuff, then tapped his access pin against the doorframe, not enough to activate anything. "I will speak to the supervising caretaker. In the meantime, you are to remain at post. Request acknowledgement that I raised concern at 2247. The steward nodded once. Acknowledged. He turned and walked back the way he came, footsteps fading into the corridor's quiet geometry. The guard did not relax. He watched the door. 30 seconds passed, then a minute. The interior sound returned, sharper this time, a short, breathless sob, quickly cut off. The guard felt a shift in his chest, a tightening that had nothing to do with fear. He activated the comm again, this time selecting supervisory escalation. "Control, Post 7, distress escalating. Request immediate on-site verification." The reply came too quickly. "Post 7, stand down. Household oversight has assumed responsibility." Stand down. The words were clear, logged, final. The guard closed his eyes for a fraction of a second. He opened them and looked at the door. The line of light beneath it was gone now. Someone inside had turned off the lamp. He imagined the room beyond, the controlled temperature, the soft furnishings, the small bed scaled for a child who had not chosen this place. He imagined the silence being enforced rather than earned. He reached for the override key again. This time he unclipped it. His thumb hovered over the activation ridge. He knew the consequences. Forced entry without authorization would trigger inquiry, suspension, possibly removal. It would create a record that could not be softened by language. Behind the door, something shifted, fabric against wood. A faint sound, barely audible, but unmistakably deliberate. The guard inserted the key into the access panel. The indicator light blinked amber. He did not turn it yet. The guard remained where he was, just outside the nursery door, body squared to the corridor as if on routine watch. The palace lighting dimmed automatically at night, amber panels casting long, softened shadows along the stone floor. The temperature was carefully regulated, but here, standing still, he felt the cold seep through the soles of his boots. He kept his breathing even. The sound came again, faint, interrupted. A child pulling air too quickly into small lungs, then stopping as if afraid of being heard. The guard did not move closer. He tilted his head slightly, listening with trained stillness. The noise was not continuous. It arrived in fragments, each one precise enough to confirm distress, but not loud enough to trigger automated alerts. He checked his wrist display. No notifications, no override signals. The system remained calm, indifferent. According to the logs, the nursery had been sealed 23 minutes earlier by an authorized caretaker, clearance level above his own. The timestamp was clean, no forced entry recorded, no anomaly flagged. He keyed his comm unit, voice low, measured. "West Corridor, Nursery Sector. I require confirmation on sealed door status." Static followed. Then a pause longer than protocol allowed. When the reply came, it was procedural, detached. Stand by, reviewing. He stood by. The corridor remained empty as expected at this hour. Night staff avoided the royal wing unless summoned. The guard's posture did not change, but his left hand loosened near the emergency override panel recessed into the wall. He did not touch it. Another sound, this time sharper, a short cry, quickly suppressed. The guard closed his eyes for a brief second, not in hesitation, but in calibration. He replayed the last security briefing in his mind, the emphasis on restraint, the reminder that unauthorized entry into royal quarters, even for senior guards, constituted a serious breach, suspension at minimum, dismissal depending on circumstances. His comm unit vibrated once. Seal confirmed, the voice said. No irregularities detected. Maintain position. The guard acknowledged without speaking. The words did not match what his senses reported. He took one step closer to the door, enough to see the hinge clearly. The metal bore a faint abrasion, fresh enough to catch the light. Not damage, pressure. He crouched, examining the lower edge. The seal strip was intact but misaligned by a fraction of a centimeter, too small for most to notice, too precise to be accidental. He stood again, straightening his uniform. The insignia at his shoulder felt heavier than usual. Authority without autonomy, responsibility without permission. He keyed his comm unit again, requesting visual confirmation from internal camera feed. The response was immediate this time, too immediate. Feed unavailable, scheduled maintenance. That was incorrect. He knew the schedule. The maintenance window had closed an hour earlier. Silence returned, the kind that did not belong in a protected wing. The guard placed his palm flat against the door. The wood was cool, solid. Between him and the child, it represented policy, hierarchy, and consequence. Inside, the sound shifted, a movement, fabric against skin, a breath caught halfway through. The guard removed his hand and stood motionless. He did not reach for the override, not yet, but his stance changed, weight forward, as if the decision had already begun forming somewhere beyond formal thought. The guard waited for one final response that did not come. No corrective order, no supervisory presence. The silence was its own instruction, though not the one written into protocol. He stepped fully in front of the door. The corridor sensors adjusted, registering his proximity. Somewhere deeper in the system, a routine log entry began to form, noting deviation from assigned post. He reached up and disengaged the body cam mounted at his collar, setting it to internal record only. That action alone would be reviewed later. He accepted that. Inside the nursery, the sound rose again, sharper now, edged with panic. The child was no longer trying to be quiet. The guard exhaled once, slow and deliberate, then pressed the emergency override. The panel resisted, requiring sustained pressure and biometric confirmation. His palm remained steady. The system hesitated, 3 seconds that felt deliberate, before the lock disengaged with a muted mechanical click. He pushed the door open. The room was dim, lit only by a night panel near the ceiling. Soft, neutral colors, furnishings arranged with ceremonial precision. Nothing overturned, no obvious disorder. That, more than chaos, unsettled him. The young heir sat on the floor beside the bed, knees drawn tight to chest, arms locked around them. The child's face was turned away, pressed into the fabric of a small blanket. The crying stopped the moment the door opened, replaced by rigid stillness. The guard closed the door behind him and locked it manually. He did not approach immediately. He scanned the room first, methodical, professional. Windows sealed, no hidden compartments disturbed, no visible recording devices beyond the standard nursery feed, dark, inactive. Then he saw the marks. Not injuries in the obvious sense, no blood, no bruising, but faint red impressions at the child's wrists, symmetrical, as if from restraint applied carefully and removed too recently for the skin to recover. The guard's jaw tightened. He knelt slowly, lowering himself to the child's level without closing the distance. "It's all right," he said, quietly. 2 words, neutral, not reassurance, but presence. The child did not look up. Breathing remained uneven. The guard removed one glove and placed it on the floor between them, an unspoken offering. After a moment, the child's fingers loosened slightly from the blanket, eyes flicking toward the object. Still no sound. The guard reached for his comm unit again. This time he did not use the standard channel. He switched to incident escalation, a path rarely taken without direct authorization. His voice remained steady as he spoke, giving only facts, location, condition, observations, no accusations. The reply came from a senior duty officer, calm, controlled. "You were instructed to hold position." "I am holding position. Inside." A pause followed, not static, thought. "Remain where you are," the officer said finally. "Do not alter the environment." The guard acknowledged. He had already altered it by entering. There was no reversing that. He rose and moved closer, careful not to startle the child. He removed his cloak and draped it loosely around the small shoulders. The fabric was warm, heavy, official. The child flinched, then stilled, fingers tightening in the cloth. From the corridor beyond the locked door came the faint sound of approaching footsteps, measured, unhurried, authority walking, not running. The guard positioned himself between the door and the child, back straight, hands visible. Whatever came next would not be quiet, and it would not be private. The guard stood close enough now to feel the temperature change near the nursery door. The corridor behind him was cool, managed air circulating evenly as designed. Here, near the opening, the air was warmer and stale, carrying a faint sour note that did not belong to polished wood and cleaned stone. He did not touch the door yet. He adjusted his stance instead, placing his feet square, ensuring his shadow did not cross the narrow gap. Inside, the sound came again, not a cry this time, a shallow intake of breath, then a pause that lasted too long. The guard checked his watch without lifting his arm fully. 23 seconds since the last sound. He noted it automatically, the way he had been trained to log irregularities without interpretation. The training did not account for this kind of silence. He keyed his radio once more, low power, throat mic close to his collar. "West Corridor, nursery access. I am initiating entry under protective authority." He waited for an override. None came. The channel stayed open, empty except for faint static. He did not repeat the call. His hand closed around the handle. The latch resisted slightly, more than it should have. That resistance was another detail. He applied pressure gradually, testing for a secondary lock. There was none. The wood flexed before the mechanism gave way with a sound that was too loud in the narrow corridor. He stepped through immediately, closing the door behind him with his heel to cut off the echo. The room was dim, night lighting only, recessed strips along the baseboards casting a low amber glow. Curtains were half drawn, uneven. The guard registered furniture positions first, cut against the far wall, small table overturned near the window, a chair pushed too close to the door. None of it matched the standard layout. His eyes moved last to the floor. The child was not in the cot. The young heir sat on the rug near the wall, knees pulled tight to his chest. His night clothing was rumpled, one sleeve twisted awkwardly. A soft restraint band lay open beside him, the kind used during medical procedures, its fastening straps stretched as if pulled free in a hurry. The guard felt a tightening across his shoulders, but did not let it change his pace. He lowered himself slowly, staying within the child's line of sight, but not advancing. The boy's eyes were open, unfocused, tracking movement without recognition. His breathing was uneven, shallow, each breath catching slightly at the top. No visible injuries, no blood. That absence mattered too. The guard removed one glove and placed it on the floor, an empty gesture, but a deliberate one. He spoke quietly, using the same tone he used during drills involving displaced civilians. "You're safe," he said, once, no repetition. The child did not respond. His hands were clenched so tightly that the knuckles had gone pale. The guard noted faint red marks around the wrists, already fading, already being reclaimed by the skin. He did not touch them. He adjusted his position instead, angling his body between the child and the door. Footsteps sounded outside the room. They were measured, unhurried. The guard recognized the cadence immediately. Not patrol, administrative, authority moving with expectation, not urgency. The handle turned once from the outside, testing the door. The guard rose to his feet and placed his hand flat against the wood, steady, ready. The handle moved again, this time with intent. The guard kept his hand where it was, applying just enough pressure to signal resistance, without force. He did not speak. The corridor light spilled briefly through the frame as the door shifted, then stopped. A voice came through the wood, calm, controlled. "You are not cleared to be inside that room." The guard did not answer immediately. He stepped back half a pace, ensuring the child remained behind him, partially obscured by his stance. Only then did he respond. "The nursery was compromised," he said. "The child was in distress." There was a pause, not surprise, calculation. The door opened fully. The man who entered wore no uniform, only a tailored dark coat and the small crest pin at the lapel that granted access without explanation. His eyes moved quickly, taking in the overturned furniture, the open restraint band, the child on the floor. His expression shifted, but only slightly, as if adjusting to a detail he had not expected to see firsthand. "This is a controlled environment," he said. "You should have waited." The guard met his gaze. "Protocol allows immediate entry where harm is suspected." Harm was not suspected, it was managed. The word hung between them, managed. The guard did not challenge it directly. He stepped aside just enough to reveal the child's wrists, the fading marks visible even in the low light. He did not point, he did not accuse, he simply allowed the evidence to exist. The man exhaled through his nose. "You will step out," he said. "Medical staff are en route." "Already requested." No response. Another pause, this one longer. The man's eyes flicked briefly to the radio at the guard's shoulder, then back to his face. "You've exceeded your scope." The guard nodded once. "I will document that." The man's jaw tightened. He glanced at the child again, then away, as if the sight was inconvenient rather than troubling. The family will not appreciate irregular reporting. The guard crouched again, placing himself lower than the authority figure, closer to the child. He did not look back. The report is mandatory. Silence filled the room, thickened by the low hum of the ventilation. The child shifted slightly, his breathing evening out as the guard remained near, a steady presence without touch. The restraint band lay where it was, impossible to ignore. The man stepped back toward the door. "This does not leave this corridor," he said. "It already has," the guard replied, tapping his radio once deliberately. For the first time, the man looked him directly, not as a subordinate, but as an obstacle. The look lasted only a moment, then it was gone, replaced with something smoother, practiced. "See that the child is returned to the cot and remain available." He left without another word. The guard waited until the footsteps faded before moving. He stood slowly, scanning the room again, committing every detail to memory. The displaced chair, the curtain pulled too tight on one side, the faint indentation on the rug where the child had been held. He removed his second glove and set it beside the first. Only then did he gently lift the child, supporting him carefully, avoiding the wrists. The boy did not resist. He leaned in, small and warm, his breathing finally steady. The guard placed him back into the cot and stood watch beside it, eyes on the door, already aware that the breach had changed more than the room.
The room was warmer than the corridor, heat held in by thick walls and heavy drapery. It smelled faintly of antiseptic and linen starch. The guard registered it automatically, the way he registered all enclosed spaces, but his attention stayed fixed on the child. The young heir sat on the floor near the bed, back against the frame, knees drawn in. There were no visible injuries. That was the first relief, brief and controlled. The second observation followed immediately. The child was not crying loudly. He was trying not to. His hands were clenched in the fabric of his sleep shirt, fingers white at the joints. His breathing came in shallow, uneven pulls, each one carefully managed, as if noise itself was something to be feared. When the guard stepped fully inside, boots crossing the threshold, the child's eyes lifted. They widened, then dropped again, not in relief, but in caution. The guard closed the door behind him, deliberately, leaving it unlatched. He knelt, keeping distance, lowering his profile. He did not speak. Protocol allowed presence, not reassurance. Still, his posture shifted slightly, blocking the child from the rest of the room. Only then did he scan the space properly. The bed was untouched. The sheets were turned down but unwrinkled, the pillow uncompressed. A restraint strip lay folded on the bedside chair, not in use, but not stored. Its clasp faced upward. The wall-mounted monitor above the door showed a paused feed icon, time-stamped, frozen 12 minutes earlier. That detail settled heavily. The caretaker entered without sound. She had that practiced stillness of long service, a way of moving that suggested familiarity rather than intrusion. Her uniform was immaculate, pressed to regulation standards, insignia aligned. She stopped when she saw him, eyes flicking briefly to the child, then back to the guard. "You're not scheduled for this wing," she said quietly. Her tone was not defensive, it was corrective. The guard rose, just enough to face her, leaving one knee close to the floor. His body remained between her and the child. He did not adjust his stance when she noticed this. "The door was unsealed," he replied. "The log indicates otherwise." She inclined her head, a gesture that could have meant acknowledgement or dismissal. "The child was distressed. I initiated calming protocol." Without record.
The record would follow once the episode resolved. The guard glanced at the restraint strip. He did not point to it. He did not need to. Her gaze followed his, then returned to his face. "Preventive measure," she said. "Approved." "By whom?" There was a pause, not long enough to be hesitation, long enough to be deliberate. "Senior household authority," she answered, "as per standing mandate." The words were correct, the phrasing precise. The guard felt the pressure of it, the way institutional language could seal a space tighter than any lock. He thought of the frozen camera feed, the untouched bed, the child seated on the floor as if choosing a place that felt safer. He stepped half a pace to the side, not retreating, just enough to signal intent. The child will be relocated to supervised care. Her expression changed then, subtly. The calm remained, but something closed behind it. "You don't have clearance for that decision," she said. "I have clearance to prevent harm." The caretaker drew a breath, slow and controlled. "You are exceeding your role." The guard felt the weight of the corridor outside, the chain of command that would already be closing in. He looked down at the child. The boy had not moved, but his hands had loosened slightly, fingers uncurling from the fabric. That was enough to confirm what the logs could not.
The caretaker's hand moved toward the wall panel, slow enough to be non-threatening, deliberate enough to be noticed. The guard mirrored the movement by shifting his weight forward. He did not block her arm. He did not need to. The message was already clear. "State your intent," he said. "To notify supervisory staff. This situation is escalating beyond protocol." He nodded once. "It already has." The panel chimed softly as she activated it. A status light blinked amber, not red. Internal call, not an alarm. She was careful. The guard noted that too. While she spoke in measured tones to someone unseen, he crouched again, this time closer to the child. Still no words. He removed his gloves, placed them on the floor where the boy could see them. Bare hands were not regulation inside private royal quarters. He accepted the infraction. The child's gaze flicked to the gloves, then to the guard's face. There was a tremor in his shoulders that eased slightly when the guard settled into stillness. No sudden movements, no reaching, just presence. The caretaker ended the call. "They are on their way," she said. "You should step back." The guard did not move. Instead, he scanned the room again, slower this time, with purpose. On the writing desk near the window sat a thin tablet, screen dark but still warm to the touch. He pressed the side key. The interface bloomed to life, paused on a checklist, behavioral conforming markers, time-stamped notes. Several entries had been flagged as non-conforming. The most recent had no resolution attached. He turned the screen slightly so she could see. These require dual sign-off. They will receive it. After the fact. Her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "You're interpreting distress as harm." He considered his reply carefully. "I'm interpreting concealment as risk." Footsteps approached in the corridor, measured and confident. Senior staff, not hurried. The guard felt the narrowing of options, the way authority arrived not with force, but with assumption. Two officials entered, both in administrative dress, insignia denoting household governance rather than security. Their eyes moved quickly. The guard's stance, the child on the floor, the caretaker standing rigid near the panel. "This wing is under restricted care. Explain." The guard stood fully now. The child was isolated without record. Monitoring was suspended. Physical compliance measures were prepared without cause documented.
The second official looked at the caretaker. "Is that accurate?" She met his gaze. "The child exhibited recurring resistance behaviors. I acted within mandate to stabilize." The guard watched the child as this exchange unfolded. The boy had shifted closer, small movements, until his shoulder brushed the guard's knee. It was not dramatic, it was instinctive, a choice made without words. That choice was visible to everyone in the room. Silence followed, heavier than accusation. The first official exhaled. "We will review the documentation," he said. "For now, return to your post." The order was directed at the guard. He did not refuse, he adjusted it. "The child will not remain here unattended. That is within my authority." A pause. Calculations. The officials were not villains. They were custodians of continuity. He saw that in their hesitation. Finally, the second official nodded once. "Temporary assignment. Escort the child to observation. The caretaker will stand down pending review." The caretaker's face remained composed, but her hands tightened at her sides. She said nothing. The guard rose and offered his hand, palm open but low. The child looked at it for a second long, then placed his own hand inside it. The grip was light, but it held. As they moved toward the door, the guard felt the weight of what he had initiated. Reports would follow, questions, quiet pressure. But behind him, the door remained open, and the monitor feed resumed, its red recording light steady and visible. He did not look back. The guard closed the nursery door with care, not to conceal what had happened, but to control the environment. The corridor beyond remained unchanged. Polished stone, indirect lighting, the faint hum of ventilation. But inside the room, the air felt disturbed, as if something had been moved out of alignment and not yet settled. The child sat on the low bed, wrapped in a guard-issued thermal blanket. Too large, folded twice. The air's breathing had slowed, though it remained uneven, catching slightly at the top of each inhale. No visible injuries beyond faint red impressions at the wrists, already fading. The guard noted them anyway. He noted everything. He keyed his internal recorder on, not for narrative, but for sequence. Time, location, door status, child condition, environmental observations. He did not kneel. He remained at eye level by sitting on the edge of the opposite bench, hands visible, posture neutral. Training dictated distance, tone, containment. The child's gaze followed the recorder light briefly, then dropped to the blanket. A soft knock came from the outer door, not abrupt, measured. "Entry permitted," the guard said. A senior duty officer stepped in, uniform immaculate, expression controlled. He did not approach the child. His eyes moved first to the forced latch, then to the guard. "I was informed there was an irregularity," the officer said. "There was," the guard replied. He did not elaborate yet. The officer waited. Silence was a common instrument at this level. The guard finished his initial recording, secured the file, and removed the recorder from visible sight. Only then did he speak again. "Door logged sealed at 2140, forced at 2206 under child distress protocol. No prior authorization received despite escalation attempt." The officer's jaw tightened slightly, a sign but not objection. "You understand," the officer said, "that forced entry into a royal residence without clearance carries consequences." "I understand," the guard said. He did not add context. The record would. The officer glanced at the child now, the blanket, the stillness. Something shifted briefly before professional control returned. "Medical," the officer asked. "Non-emergency priority. Child stable." The officer nodded. He moved closer to the window, away from both of them. "Who had authorized access to this room?" he asked. "According to access logs, 3 names, 1 present tonight beyond scheduled hours." The officer did not ask which. He already knew the list. Silence returned, thicker this time. The guard retrieved a slim data slate from his vest and placed it on the side table, screen active, incident file, time-stamped, cross-referenced, uneditable. "I have completed a preliminary standing record," he said. "It includes observations that fall outside routine deviation." The officer turned. "You submitted it already?" "Yes." "To whom?" "Internal oversight. Duplicate copy flagged immutable." The officer exhaled slowly. Not anger, calculation. "You are aware," he said, "that such submissions trigger automatic review?" "Yes." "And that reviews attract attention?" "Yes." The officer looked at him steadily now. "You are a capable guard. This path will not be quiet." The guard held his gaze. His posture did not change. "The record stands, regardless of outcome." Another knock interrupted them. Medical staff this time, waiting for clearance. The officer hesitated, then nodded once. "Proceed," he said. As the medical team entered, the officer leaned closer to the guard, voice low. "This will not end with paperwork. Others will respond." The guard watched the child as the blanket was gently adjusted, smaller hands gripping the edge. "I am aware."
The medical staff worked with quiet efficiency, no hurried movements, no unnecessary words. The lead clinician performed a visual assessment first, then signaled for a portable scanner. The device emitted a low, even tone as it passed over the child's wrists, shoulders, and neck. The guard stood where he was, close enough to intervene, far enough to avoid crowding. His presence was not for reassurance, it was for continuity. "Minor compression marks," the clinician said at last, voice kept deliberately neutral. "No fractures. Elevated stress indicators. We'll document and monitor." The officer acknowledged with a nod. "No sedation," he said. "None indicated," the clinician replied. The child did not speak. When the scanner was removed, the small hands loosened slightly from the blanket, then retightened when one medic stepped back too quickly. The guard noted the reaction. He did not comment. It would be included later in the behavioral section of the report, where observations were logged without interpretation. Once the medical team withdrew, the room felt larger, emptier. The officer gestured toward the corridor. "Walk with me," he said. They stepped together, leaving 2 guards posted at the nursery's entrance. The corridor lighting dimmed automatically as they moved, responding to their clearance codes. The palace at this hour operated on reduced systems, conserving energy, reducing noise. It made conversations carry farther than intended. "You forced a situation," the officer said, "not accusatory, not approving." "I responded to one," the guard answered. "Others will say the difference matters." The guard did not argue. He knew how such distinctions were made, slowly, by committees, with language that softened edges until responsibility blurred. They stopped at a recessed alcove overlooking the inner courtyard. Night air pressed against the glass, cold and still. Somewhere below, a fountain cycled on, its rhythm steady and indifferent. "The caretaker in question has served here for 11 years, no prior incidents." "Length of service does not preclude misuse of authority," the guard replied. "No," the officer agreed, "but it complicates removal." The guard understood what was being offered, context, not defense. The palace relied on continuity, trust layered over time. Challenging that structure threatened more than one individual. "I did not assign motive, only actions and conditions observed."
And yet, the officer said, the implication is clear. Yes. The officer studied him for a long moment. You will be reassigned pending review, he said finally. Not punitive, procedural. Understood. You may be asked to amend your statement. I will not, the guard said calmly. Clarify, then. I will not amend facts. The officer's mouth tightened again. This time it did not relax. Be aware that oversight answers to the Crown before it answers to itself. The guard met his gaze. So do we all, he said. They returned to the nursery. The child was asleep now, breathing more even, one hand still clutching the blanket. A palace aide waited nearby, face carefully composed, eyes avoiding the guards. The aide would replace the caretaker by morning. Officially, it would be temporary. The guard completed the remaining documentation at a small console outside the room. Every timestamp aligned, every action accounted for. He attached biometric logs, access records, audio captures. He flagged the file complete. Before sealing it, he added one final line under observations. Child exhibited sustained distress inconsistent with routine discipline or corrective care. No adjectives, no conclusions. He submitted the addendum and locked the file. As he stepped back, the corridor lights brightened slightly, responding to movement elsewhere in the palace, systems adjusting, people waking up, the machinery of response beginning to turn. The officer paused beside him. You may have done the right thing, he said quietly. That does not mean it will be treated as such. The guard looked once more through the glass at the sleeping child, then straightened. The record is not for approval, it is for permanence. The officer said no more. The guard turned and walked down the corridor, boots silent against the stone, already aware that from this point forward every step he took inside these walls would be measured differently.